is Radio Prague, Czechoslovakya. The Asian and Pacific service of Radio Prague is on the air for you several times daily. There are 2 half-hour broadcasts starting at 7:30 and 8:30 hours Greenwich Mean Time, respectively, coming to you in the 25, 19, and 13 meters. This is Radio Prague, Czechoslovakya.
Zde Praha, Československé zahraniční vysílání.
The great gymnast Věra has died at the age of 74. Tributes have been paid to the Czech Olympics legend, and the Justice Minister wants more powers for customs officials. Czech gymnast Věra Czechoslovakya, whose 7 gold medals made her the country's most decorated Olympic athlete, has died at the age of 74 after a long battle with cancer. Czechoslovakya's medals included golds in gymnastics in the 1964 and 1968 Olympic Games. She was a vocal critic of the 1968 Soviet-led invasion of Czechoslovakia and was banned from competing in the Olympics after signing the Pro-Reform Manifesto 2,000 words. And tributes have been paid to Věra Czechoslovakya. Prime Minister Bohuslav Sobotka said Czech and world sport had lost one of the greatest icons. The country's foreign minister, Lubomir Zaorálek, said Czechoslovakya had enjoyed unparalleled fame, but at the same time was a modest and brave fighter. The head of the Czech Olympic Committee, Jiří Kejval, said she had always been an example to others as a sportsperson, and thanks to her civic position and the remarkable fighting spirit she showed in her private life. The Minister of Justice, Anno appointment Robert Pelikan, is working on an amendment to the Criminal Code that would give customs officials powers to investigate crimes. Mr. Pelikan said the move would increase efficiency, as it would do away with the situation under which customs officials hand cases over to the police, who then go over the same ground. A similar idea was put forward last week by ANO leader and Finance Minister Andrej Babiš, whose ministry oversees the customs administration. The Interior Minister Milan Chovanec of the Social Democrats has come out against the proposal. He recently announced the creation of a new financial police unit to focus on tax crime from the start. Marek Dalik, who was a close advisor of Polanyi when the latter was Prime Minister, left the Czech Republic on Wednesday morning, 1 week to begin serving a prison term. Neovlivní.cz reported. Mr. Dalik told the news website that the trip had been planned in advance and that he had informed the judge in his case of his intentions. On Thursday afternoon, the one-time political operator is due to start a 4-year term for soliciting bribes in connection with a large military contract in 2007. The Chinese company CEFC is free to purchase Prague's high-end Mandarin Oriental Hotel after the deal was approved by the Office for the Protection of Competition. The news was announced by a spokesperson for the antitrust agency on Wednesday. The Chinese firm will buy the Malastrana property through its company Karmelitska Hotel, and says it aims to capitalize on the rapid rise in the number of tourists between the two countries. CEFC has already made substantial investments in the Czech Republic, buying Slavia Prague Football Club, the Liptovitz Brewery, and a large chunk of air carrier travel service. The budget airline Ryanair is planning to increase its number of routes from Prague to next summer, adding the English Pool and Trapani in Sicily. The company currently has 3 routes from the Czech capital and had already planned 2 new ones to Rome and Bergamo from November. Ryanair said the new lines would mean an annual increase of around 250,000 people travelling from Prague. My name is Ian Willoughby, and that's the end of the news.
You are listening to Radio Prague, the international service of Czech Radio. I'm Daniela Vidovic. Coming up in today's program, Czech sports legend gymnast Věra Čáslavská has died at the age of 74. We'll talk about the upcoming European Heritage Days, which will open hundreds of historic and cultural sites to visitors for free. And what is the 80th anniversary of Radio Prague's first ever broadcast? We'll look at the present and future of the medium with the European Broadcasting Union's head of radio, Graham Dixon. Stay with us for all that. The sad news was announced on Wednesday that the most successful ever Czech Olympic athlete, Věra Čáslavská, died. She is battling cancer of the pancreas. The gymnast will be remembered not just for her protest against the Soviet bloc invasion of Czechoslovakia at the 1968 Mexico Olympics. Chris Johnson reports.
Věra Čáslavská had already made her mark on the global sporting scene before the Mexico Olympics, which were staged just 2 months after the Soviet-led invasion of Czechoslovakia in August 1968 to crush the reforming movements in the country. Čáslavská had won a silver medal with the Czechoslovak team in the 1960 Rome Olympics. She won gold, silver and bronze medals at the World Championships in her hometown Prague in 1962, and went on to do even better with 2 golds at the event in 1966. And at the Tokyo Olympics in 1964, she took home gold medals for the combined all-round, vault and beam competitions, and was one of the stars of the competition and a big hit with the Japanese audiences. The heady atmosphere of Mexico, which she compared to a bull ring, Čáslavská did even better, with 4 golds, adding the top medals for the uneven bars and floor exercises to her tally. She is regarded as the queen of the Olympic competition. The Czech gymnast said later she had set her heart on winning as many golds as she could, often in competition with top Soviet gymnasts, to protest her country's invasion. But Čáslavská wanted to make the point on the medals podium as well when both the Czechoslovak and Soviet anthems were played. She pointedly turned her head down and away from the Soviet flag when the bombastic anthem was played at 2 of her medal ceremonies. Věra Čáslavská told Czech television in an interview earlier this year, when already battling cancer, that the first time around her protest was an impromptu reaction to the unloved anthem.
Najednou úplně usí kůži a úplně automaticky.
All of a sudden my hair stood on end and I automatically turned my head not to the ground because the flag was quite low and I was on the podium, but perceptibly to the side away from the occupiers' flags. It was understood by the Western journalists and at home by ours as well. The gesture was on the borderline of what was acceptable. The International Olympic Committee could have easily disqualified me if it had gone even the slightest bit further.
But it was not so much that gesture, but another decision before the Olympics to sign one of the key documents of the so-called Prague Spring, 2,000 words, which called for reforms beyond those the Czechoslovak Communist Party was willing to concede, which got her into trouble. After Mexico, Čáslavská was put under intense pressure to withdraw her signature. Unlike some other famous personalities, she refused and paid a dear price. At one stage, she was reduced to being a cleaner. She was later even banned from this work for fear that her treatment would become known in the West. Věra Čáslavská returned to the forefront of public life after the Velvet Revolution in 1989, turning down offers such as ambassador to Japan or mayor of Prague, and opting to become an advisor to the new president, Václav Havel. She was outspoken for the values she cherished until her death.
Chris Johnson with that report. Turning now to a European event, nearly 1,000 cultural and historical sites as well as technical landmarks across the Czech Republic will open to the public for free during the European Heritage Day starting this weekend. Over the course of 9 days, people will get the chance to see hundreds of sites, many of which are not normally accessible to the public. Ruth Frankova has the details.
The Czech Republic joined the European Heritage Days held at the initiative of the Council of Europe as the first post-communist country back in 1991. Over the years, the event has gained immense popularity and attracts around 500,000 visitors each year. Close to 150 municipalities joined the event this year, and some 250 events, including lectures, exhibitions and guided tours, are scheduled to take place. Since 2005, Days of European Heritage are organized by the Association of Historical Settlements in Bohemia, Moravia and Silesia. Association head David Vá outlines the importance.
The main aim of the European Heritage Days is to draw attention to the country's many cultural and historical monuments, a precious legacy from our predecessors that needs to be protected for future generations. It is also important to stress that thanks to tourism, these monuments bring substantial sums to the country's economy.
The 19th edition of European Heritage Days will be held under the slogan Heritage and Community, which, according to Mrs. Litvarova, emphasizes the important role that communities play in managing their own cultural heritage and keeping it alive. The Czech Republic's Heritage Days will be officially launched on Saturday in the picturesque town of Slavonice in South Bohemia. Květa Litvarová again.
Slavonice was selected not only for being a picturesque town, but also because it has really fulfilled this year's slogan, Heritage and Community. Civic associations and public groups from the town and the region have taken an active part in preparing the program, and they will launch it unofficially already on Friday.
As part of the official opening, the organizers of the European Heritage Days will also announce the bearer of tradition of folk craft.
The title bearer of the traditional folk craft has been awarded since 2001 by the Minister of Culture. To receive the title, the craftsmen have fulfilled two conditions: to master their trade and to pass their skills on to the next generation. The winners of this year's title are Jiří Rufer, a carver of wooden gingerbread molds, and Josef Fielder, who specializes in hand-weaving techniques. The Czech Republic's European Heritage Days will run until the 11th of September. Ruth Frankova with that report. Now, as I said, this is a very special day for the station. Radio Prague is celebrating its 80th birthday. It first went on the air at 10 a.m. on August 31st of 1936. But a lot has clearly happened in the 8 decades since its very first broadcast. But where is radio at now, and where is it headed? Ian Willoughby discussed those questions and more with Graham Dixon, head of radio at the European Broadcasting Union, in this special program.
Radio Prague is today celebrating the 80th anniversary of its first shortwave broadcast. Obviously, the medium of radio has changed enormously since the 31st of August 1936, particularly in recent the internet. To look at where radio is at today and where it may be headed in the future, I spoke to Graham Dixon, a former managing editor at BBC Radio 3, who's now head of radio at the European Broadcasting Union in Geneva. My first question concerns the biggest changes Mr. Dixon has seen in his 3 decades plus in the radio industry.
When I started, there was a single linear channel, which was radio, and you were absolutely obsessed by making that one channel as good as possible. And of course, if you missed a program, unless you were fortunate enough to be working in the industry, if you missed a program, that was it. There was no way you could access this. Whereas actually now, it seems to be the most significant thing is actually the fact that you can actually listen on demand. There are clearly things Of course, the Olympics, which we just had, and news, which are very exciting when they're at the moment. And I think that's a real particularity of radio. But actually being able to go back, being able to access programs, listen when you like, has gone along, I think, with an increasing focus and awareness on audience needs and serving audiences. I think we're far more interactive now, clearly because the technology allows it, but actually also in our attitude as an industry in terms of reaching out to audiences, having a dialogue with them, and actually creating services to meet their changing needs, respecting the fact that they have many, many calls on their time, and we want to be an attractive destination and remain so.
Well, there's been a lot of talk in recent years about DAB radio, and now, of course, many people consume radio on their smartphones or other handheld devices. Where are we at with DAB on smartphones? If I understand it right, not many phones now come with the DAB function.
Yeah, we've been really fortunate actually this year because LG has launched the DAB phone with fantastic functionality. People are starting to produce apps for it, and I'm very confident that as we go into the autumn, people will see the success of this phone, and actually there are discussions going on, which we're involved in, about other manufacturers moving in the same direction. Because I think it's massively important that radio is not only available on IP over the internet. We've all lived through a really difficult year with events in Munich, in Brussels, in Paris, and of course on those occasions when these national emergencies happen, it's quite characteristic that the government or whoever the security or responsible security are switching down the internet. And that's exactly at the moment when people most need information and most need to come back to what is an extremely reliable medium, and a medium we know from any survey to be really reliable, which is radio and public radio. So in fact, I think our societies need to have a way of transmitting radio which is independent from the internet. Of course, the ideal in the long run is to have this robust backbone of audio transmission with all sorts of exciting new offers provided with the flexibility of IP around the basic sound. But there are some issues, to say the least, about moving there, not least the amount of data that live radio listening consumes, 3 hours per person per day across Europe, and of course, battery life as well is not up to providing this. So we absolutely need terrestrial radio transmission medium. DAB, by being digital, of course, is the gateway into many new applications, many new visions of how radio can actually meet people's needs.
What about the role of cars in the future of radio? Obviously, cars are the place where many people consume radio.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Liz, because it very much varies from country to country. If you look at the statistics, a country like Italy is very, very high on car listening. In Switzerland, where I live, car listening is relatively low. But of course, it's a really important part of people's listening. Again, depending on the market, a large number of cars have DAB in the UK and Norway and in Switzerland. Germany now, with its increasing commitment to DAB, and of course its strong involvement in the car industry, means that there's going to be, I think, a considerable increase of the number of cars produced with DAB. But of course the smartphone is, of course, itself dockable into a car, which is another exciting possibility which is being explored in Norway. So I suppose when it comes to it, if we talk about platforms, I really care about robustness. But of course people need to be able to consume radio in the ways that are convenient to them. And the one thing that I really care about is that radio should be a direct relationship between the broadcaster and the consumer, not susceptible to paywalls, not susceptible to gatekeepers, but actually this should be there for everyone, rich or poor, whatever their means, to be able to consume. And for that, we really need to have devices that people pay once, they go to a shop, they buy their radio, they switch it on, and for many years, hopefully, it gives them really efficient radio programming.
You used to work for the BBC, and BBC's iPlayer is maybe the best known on-demand player that there is. I've seen it described as a catch-up service. But is it really about catching up? I think for many people, that's simply the way today they consume. They don't feel like they're catching up on anything. It's just the time that they want to consume something.
Yes, it's interesting, the iPlayer. I mean, in terms of television has become more asynchronous than radio. People are consuming more television out of real time than they are radio. Because I think that still radio, if we look at it, it's incredibly useful to have those programs on demand. And of course the iPlayer is a major success that has really transformed listening for a lot of people. But if we look at the programs that are accessed, they're very much the sort of information-heavy programs. But, what is special about radio, and of course it's really important to understand that many people working in radio, so everyone working in radio, really appreciates what IP has done. But actually, when it comes to it, radio is, for most people, most of the time, a live experience. They go there for entertainment, they go there for company, they go there for information and news, for weather, for traffic, so many aspects of our lives. Radio is a real touchstone of information and actually providing us with what we need. And a lot of that happens in real time. So at the risk of sounding slightly conservative, I think we mustn't forget the centrality of the live experience for radio listeners, which is absolutely vital. And then, of course, the add-on of being able to return to it is, of course, highly attractive.
Is the word radio still relevant? Personally, I listen very little to anything live. I think of it simply as audio.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you can take two approaches for this. I remember at the BBC, the division that I was part of called itself audio a number of years ago, and then moved back to radio. And I think that respects the fact that most of our listeners still think of what public service broadcasters do, and also, of course, commercial broadcasters, as radio. So it's having that identity. But of course, it perhaps is also underlining, and I just returned to a previous point here, it's perhaps also underlining the liveness of it. Radio is something we expect to be live, and actually that's a really special thing, that expertise of delivering live radio. So yes, of course it's audio, we can consume it when we want, but of course one of the special things that we're, I say modestly, really good at is delivering a live experience. So maybe the word radio underlines that.
And how do public radio stations justify spending money, sometimes a lot of money, on services that aren't live?
Well, I think if you're not providing a rounded service for audiences who listen however they want to, in the way they want to, on the devices and platforms they're interested in using, then I don't think there's really a great deal of future. We need to be listening to audiences, understanding their needs, and actually providing for them, rather than simply providing the listening experience via a linear stream and then expecting people to come to us. I think the days of such, how shall I say, pomposity are probably over, and that we need to be really aligned with audiences, aligned with their needs, and it's really impossible to say, yes, but you have to be interested in, consumer affairs at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, otherwise you've got to wait until next Tuesday at 2 o'clock. Those days are gone.
Radio Prague is celebrating 80 years of existence. Obviously, you don't have a crystal ball, you can't see 80 years into the future. But if we look to the nearest future, in the coming decades, what do you see as the most likely developments in radio?
Well, first of all, congratulations on 80 years. This is the most fantastic achievement. We've been talking a lot about technology together. Of course, 80 years ago, it was technological innovation which made this whole thing possible. And clearly, we've reached the point at which we have the flexibility of being able to listen out of real time, and we've discussed that a certain amount. But all sorts of exciting things could happen. I was in touch with someone recently who was seeing if there was a Google-type application that could be put on top of audio, so that audio could be searched. So we could look for the first use of a word. We could look back, for instance, even over what different politicians have said, and look for when they've talked about on radio different subjects. That sort of deep search of audio is something that's not yet really available, but something that actually could be a way of changing our perception and looking backwards over our archives. I think that could be incredibly interesting. I also think that personalization is really important. To what extent would we want to make our own schedule? We've talked about live, we've talked about on demand, but could we use our own schedule that gives us what we want live to keep us in contact with our world, but actually at the same time a world into subjects or musical choices which really interest us in between. So is it possible somehow to create our own schedule? And then there's all the stuff about wearables and information, being able to give smarter updates. Wouldn't it be interesting, for instance, if a particular subject that you notified was about to be mentioned and you got a message saying they're about to talk on a particular, musician, subject of news interest, and you knew that was about to happen, to get that type of warning that it's worth actually tuning in because there's a live update. I think the opportunities for radio, for audio, and for public service are really more than ever before, and I think it's up to us all working in the industry to have an incredibly open mind and try and exploit these exciting opportunities.
Graham Dixon, head of radio at the European Broadcasting Union, speaking there to Ian Willoughby on the occasion of Radio Prague's 80th birthday. On our birthday anniversary, we also promised to announce the winner of Radio Prague's competition, who will receive a 4-day stay in Prague with you at Savoy Hotel in the city centre, as well as paid return airline tickets for two. Well, that time has now come, and the author of the most original essay sent to us on the subject of what Radio Prague will be broadcasting about in 8 years' time is Anna Kochergina from Russia. Well, congratulations to her and 12 finalists who will receive. The text of the winning essay, as well as the names of those finalists, are on our webpage at radio.cz. Also, those of you who collect QSL cards now have the opportunity to acquire a special QSL issued to mark Radio Prague's 80th birthday. Just send in a reception report from today's broadcast. And that's all from us for today. You'll find us online at radio.cz. Should you like to contact us, then please write to english@radio.cz. We'll be glad to hear from you, as always. This is Daniela Zarová saying thanks for joining us on this very special day for Radio Prague, and take care.
Shortwave service, transmitter Noratskava, Armenia, 9885 kHz, 100 kilowatts. The following program is the 80th anniversary broadcast of Radio Prague in English language. For more information about our shortwave services, visit www.shortwaveservice.com or our Facebook site Shortwave Service.